At 75, Princess and the Princess Royal finally spoke out, and what she revealed could shake the monarchy to its very foundations. Imagine decades of whispers, secrets kept behind the palace walls, carefully guarded by generations of royals. And now, the truth, a truth no one dared speak aloud, has emerged. The children we have seen, adored, and cheered for, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, may not be the biological offspring of Prince Harry. Can you believe it? All those years of media coverage, public appearances, royal family photographs, documentaries, and interviews. Everything we assumed about these young lives may have been a carefully maintained illusion. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Princess Anne has always been a figure of composure, loyalty, and no-nonsense honesty. Unlike her brother Charles or nephew William, she has rarely indulged in public theatrics or media spectacles. She has been observed, studied, and sometimes misunderstood, but no one can deny her acumen and unflinching eye for truth. And now, after years of silence, she has chosen to break it. The timing is deliberate. The revelations are explosive, and the implications, emotional, political, and historical, are far-reaching. But why now? Why at 75, in a world more scrutinized than ever, did and decide that silence was no longer an option? Could it be that the palace, burdened by secrecy and whispers of deception, reached a tipping point? Or perhaps, as some insiders suggest, she saw the world changing around her, ready to accept truths that were once unthinkable. Whatever the reason, this statement is not just another royal announcement. This is history being rewritten before our very eyes. Let's set the stage. For years, Archie Harrison, born in May 2019, and Lilibet Diana, born in June 2021, have been subjects of adoration and curiosity alike. Media coverage has been relentless, painting a narrative that aligns seamlessly with public perception, that these children are the biological progeny of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, heirs in the line of succession, and symbols of the evolving royal family. Every public appearance, every photo op, every carefully curated social media post reinforced this perception, and the public bought it. We all did. Yet, behind the polished veneer of royal appearances, whispers have always circulated. Whispers of tension, suspicion, and even outright secrecy. Staff members, aides, and palace insiders have long hinted that not all is as it seems. Rumors about surrogacy, alternate parentage, and hidden truths have floated through the media, only to be dismissed by official channels. But what if these whispers were not just gossip? What if they were glimpses of a much deeper, far more shocking reality? Princess Anne's statement now confirms what the palace has meticulously hidden. She revealed, in a tone measured yet unmistakably firm, that Archie and Lilibet are not the biological children of Prince Harry. Let that sink in. The children, celebrated globally as the future of the monarchy, do not carry Harry's DNA. The ramifications of this revelation are staggering. The line of succession, already complex and steeped in centuries of tradition, may need re-evaluation. Public trust, built slowly over decades, faces a potential fracture, and the royal family, long accustomed to controlling narratives, may finally confront a truth it cannot contain. Imagine the scene inside Buckingham Palace when this information first circulated. Private aides scrambling to secure documents, whispered conversations in dimly lit corridors, the Queen herself reportedly pausing mid-meal to process what had just been revealed. There is a sense of disbelief that permeates the palace, because this is not just a minor scandal. This is a revelation that touches the very core of what the monarchy represents. The careful orchestration of lineage, legacy, and image, all challenged in a single statement. So how did this come to light? What led Princess Anne, a royal often described as disciplined, reserved, and intensely private, to reveal a truth the palace worked so hard to conceal? Sources suggest that DNA confirmations, verified by multiple independent tests, were the final pieces of evidence. These findings, corroborated by historical documents and private communications, left, and with a decision, continue the centuries-old tradition of silence, or finally expose a secret that had weighed heavily on her conscience. And make no mistake, this was not a spur-of-the-moment revelation. The timing, the phrasing, and the careful framing of her statement indicate meticulous planning. And, known for her strategic mind and unparalleled understanding of palace dynamics, likely anticipated the public reaction. She likely anticipated the scrutiny, the shock waves through the media, the inevitable debates among royal enthusiasts and critics alike. And yet, she chose transparency over preservation, truth over comfort, fact over image. This revelation also forces us to examine Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's role in the narrative. Were they aware? Did they know? Or were they, too, operating under assumptions crafted by palace secrecy? There are conflicting reports. Some suggest that Meghan may have known about the alternative arrangements. Others insist that Harry was kept in the dark, trusting his wife and the palace to manage what he perceived as private family matters. Either way, the emotional impact on both parents, regardless of awareness, is undeniable. Questions of trust, love, loyalty, and deception now dominate the narrative, creating a tension that goes far beyond mere headlines. But the implications do not stop there. This revelation raises critical questions for the royal line of succession. Archie and Lilibet's positions, long assumed to be secure, may now require re-evaluation. While the monarchy has historically accommodated complex family dynamics, a DNA-based disruption of assumed lineage is unprecedented in recent history. Advisors, legal experts, and historians are already speculating about potential solutions, ranging from formal acknowledgement of non-biological status to potential reassignment within the line of succession. The world is watching. What about public reaction? Social media is ablaze. Fans, royal commentators, and casual observers alike are dissecting every nuance of Anne's statement. Emotions range from shock to disbelief, from outrage to sympathy. Some argue that the children's well-being should remain paramount. Others are focused on the implications for royal credibility and transparency. And then there are those who see this revelation as a long-overdue unmasking of the carefully managed image that has dominated royal media coverage for decades. Princess Anne's own motivations are equally compelling. At 75, she stands at a crossroads of legacy and morality. She has witnessed the evolution of the monarchy over decades, the scandals, the reforms, the public adoration, and the criticism. And now, she has taken a step that few expected, prioritizing truth over decorum, reality over tradition. Her decision invites reflection on what it truly means to be a member of the royal family in the modern era. What is the cost of secrecy? What is the price of loyalty? And at what point does truth demand to be spoken, no matter the consequences? As the world absorbs this revelation, the question remains, what comes next? Will the palace attempt damage control? Will Prince Harry and Meghan issue statements? How will Archie and Lilibet process the knowledge of their biological parentage in the future? These questions linger, unanswered, hovering like a storm cloud over Buckingham Palace. And Princess Anne, the unflinching witness to decades of royal life, has left the door open, hinting at further disclosures that could reshape our understanding of the monarchy forever. And here is the twist that keeps everyone on edge. The statement hints at documents, letters, and communications that have never been seen by the public. Sources claim these papers could provide additional context, possibly implicating figures beyond and in orchestrating the long-standing secrecy. Could there be more revelations waiting to emerge? Absolutely. And the anticipation of what comes next is almost unbearable. As we prepare to delve deeper, consider this. Everything you thought you knew about the modern British royal family, about loyalty, lineage, and trust, is now in question. What role did secrecy play in shaping public perception? And what truths, hidden for decades, are still waiting to be uncovered? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Why has Princess Anne been silent for so long? This is the question that has haunted royal watchers for decades. A woman known for her unwavering dedication to duty, her no-nonsense approach, and her sharp intellect, and has observed, recorded, and sometimes intervened in the affairs of the monarchy, all while maintaining a carefully curated public image. But what if her silence wasn't just discretion or loyalty? What if it was the result of knowing things no one else dared to acknowledge? Born in 1950, Princess Anne grew up in a world governed by protocol, hierarchy, and secrecy. She witnessed the complexities of royal life from a young age, the delicate dance of appearances, the strategic alliances, and the sometimes brutal reality behind palace doors. As the second child of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, she was never destined to inherit the crown, but her life would be anything but ordinary. From a young age, she demonstrated remarkable intelligence, athleticism, and an almost uncanny ability to read people, skills that would serve her well in understanding the hidden intricacies of the royal family. Throughout her early years, and observed both the privileges and the pressures of monarchy, she saw her mother, the Queen, balance public expectation with private grief, and her father, Prince Philip, navigate duty with personal idiosyncrasies, and quickly understood that appearances were everything, yet the reality behind them often told a very different story. She learned to listen more than she spoke, to notice subtle shifts in tone, body language, and expression, and to interpret those signals carefully. For someone who would eventually speak truths few dared to articulate, this skill became invaluable. In her early adult years, and took on public roles with a sense of purpose and duty that was rare even among royals. She represented the monarchy at home and abroad, championed charities, and earned respect for her work ethic and steadfastness. Yet, behind the polished appearances, she was constantly aware of the undercurrents that others either ignored or underestimated. She noticed tensions between family members, disputes over protocol, and private disagreements that never reached the public eye. These observations gave her a unique perspective on the inner workings of the palace, a perspective that would later become crucial when secrets about Archie and Lilibet surfaced. One of Anne's most defining characteristics has always been her forthright honesty. Unlike other members of the royal family who might carefully craft public statements or maintain ambiguity to avoid controversy, and has often spoken plainly when circumstances demanded it. However, she also knew when silence was the wiser course. In many ways, her silence was strategic, a protective measure not only for herself, but for the stability of the monarchy. She understood that some truths, once spoken, could create irreparable damage, regardless of their moral or factual correctness. This delicate balance between honesty and discretion became her hallmark. Her unique position within the royal hierarchy also gave her access to information others might never see. As a trusted member of the family, she was often present during private discussions, official meetings, and behind-the-scenes moments that shaped decisions at the highest level. She observed how narratives were constructed, how stories were carefully released to the public, and how inconvenient facts were sometimes quietly buried. For decades, she accumulated knowledge that ranged from financial matters to personal disputes, and, as we now know, knowledge about the true parentage of certain family members. Anne's guarded life was not just about absorbing information. It was also about understanding the consequences of disclosure. She lived through scandals involving her siblings, the media frenzy surrounding Princess Diana, and countless rumors that spread like wildfire. She saw firsthand how misinformation could distort public perception, ruin reputations, and create tension within the family. And so, she developed a meticulous approach: observe, verify, and wait. Speak only when the time is right, when the stakes are understood, and when her words could not be misconstrued. Yet even in her silence, Anne was not passive. She quietly intervened when she saw harm being done, advised family members in private, and occasionally pushed back against decisions she believed were misguided. Those closest to her describe her as someone with an acute sense of justice, even within the rigid structures of royalty. She understood loyalty, but she also understood truth. And it is this understanding that eventually led her to confront the most sensitive secret of all, the parentage of Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. For years, Anne watched as media narratives around Harry and Meghan unfolded. She saw the young couple navigate intense scrutiny, the challenges of modern royal life, and the pressures of public expectation. She observed their interactions with the palace, their private moments that occasionally leaked to the press, and the strategic decisions that shaped their public persona. Through it all, she remained a silent witness, analyzing patterns, gathering insights, and quietly preparing for the moment when the truth could no longer be ignored. What made this situation particularly delicate was the intersection of family loyalty, public perception, and legal implications. The DNA revelation was not just a personal matter. It had far-reaching consequences for succession, public trust, and the credibility of the monarchy, and understood that revealing this information required careful timing, evidence, and a strategy that minimized unnecessary harm while maximizing the impact of the truth. She could not act impulsively, and she did not. Her silence also served a protective function for Archie and Lilibet. Despite the palace's interest in maintaining a narrative and recognized the children's vulnerability, she understood that exposing the truth prematurely could subject them to public scrutiny, media exploitation, and emotional trauma. In this sense, her guardedness was not merely a reflection of her own personality. It was an act of measured protection for the youngest members of the royal family. However, as the years passed, it became increasingly clear that silence alone could no longer contain the story. Evidence had accumulated. Documents, correspondence, and DNA confirmations pointed toward a reality that could not be ignored. The palace could attempt to bury the truth, manipulate narratives, or issue carefully worded denials, but the weight of the facts was growing impossible to manage. Princess Anne, with her characteristic decisiveness and integrity, recognized that action was necessary. And so, at 75, she made the unprecedented choice to speak. Not in passing, not in a carefully scripted press release designed to placate critics, but in a statement that was deliberate, precise, and undeniably factual. She confirmed what many had suspected but few dared to state publicly. Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana are not Prince Harry's biological children. The clarity of her declaration left little room for misinterpretation, and the palace, the media, and the public were forced to reckon with a reality that had been hidden for decades. This decision did not come lightly. Those who know Princess and describe the moment of revelation as the culmination of years of observation, analysis, and moral deliberation. She weighed the potential fallout, the impact on family relationships, and the reaction of the public. And yet, she chose truth over convenience, transparency over secrecy, and justice over image. The immediate aftermath of her statement was electric. Staff within the palace were reportedly stunned. Private aides scrambled to secure sensitive documents. Advisors debated the implications for succession, and senior members of the family convened to assess the damage control required. The public, meanwhile, was left reeling. Social media erupted, traditional media outlets scrambled to interpret the statement, and historians began parsing its significance for the monarchy's long-term stability. And yet, even amidst this whirlwind, Anne's focus remained steadfast. She was not seeking fame, vindication, or public praise. Her goal was singular: to set the historical record straight, to ensure that truth and integrity prevailed, and to protect the future of the monarchy by confronting a difficult reality head-on. But here is where the story grows even more complex. The DNA revelation, while central, is only one piece of a larger puzzle. Letters, emails, and private communications suggest a network of decisions, arrangements, and understandings that have been concealed for years. Anne's awareness of these factors, her careful navigation of palace politics, and her ultimate decision to reveal the truth hint at a broader story, one involving loyalty, betrayal, secrecy, and the lengths to which the royal family will go to protect its image. And so, as we prepare to delve deeper into the story, we must ask, what did Princess Anne witness in those silent years that compelled her to act now? What patterns, observations, and pieces of evidence accumulated over decades to make silence no longer an option? And most importantly, what will be revealed next? Truths that the palace may have hoped would never see the light of day? Because the silence of Princess Anne was not mere discretion. It was a calculated, observant, and deeply strategic choice. And now, with that silence broken, the consequences are only beginning to unfold. But what came next, what Anne saw, documented, and eventually revealed, would change everything. And no one saw it coming. The world has adored Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana from the moment they were born. Cameras flashed, headlines blared, and social media erupted with excitement every time their tiny faces were glimpsed in public. To the average observer, they seemed like the very embodiment of the modern royal family. Young, charming, and a symbol of continuity, love, and hope. But behind those smiling faces and carefully curated appearances, a truth was quietly simmering. A truth that Princess Anne, at 75, would finally bring into the light. Archie Harrison, born in May 2019, was heralded as the first child of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The birth was celebrated worldwide, with media outlets meticulously documenting every detail, from his tiny footprints to the handprints pressed into ceremonial keepsakes. Headlines proclaimed him a prince in waiting, a symbol of a new era for the monarchy, blending tradition with modernity. And yet, while the world cheered, whispers in the palace corridors told a different story. Some aides noticed subtle discrepancies, moments of quiet tension between Harry, Meghan, and senior family members, and hints that all was not as it appeared. Then came Lilibet Diana, born in June 2021. Her arrival, as if orchestrated to continue the narrative of a thriving, growing family, was met with equal fanfare. Public announcements, images, and carefully timed media releases portrayed the happy family unit in a positive light. Lilibet's very name, a nod to both Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana, was laden with symbolism, a bridge between the past and the present, a statement of lineage and legacy. Yet, as with Archie, behind-the-scenes observations hinted at complexities not visible to the public eye. Staff members, aides, and close palace confidants had long speculated about inconsistencies in timing, medical reports, and arrangements surrounding the children's births. Princess, and ever the vigilant observer, had her own perspective. She noticed the small, almost imperceptible details, subtle hesitations in conversations, careful phrasing in press releases, and moments where Harry and Meghan's accounts seemed rehearsed or overly cautious. She listened to whispers from staff who had loyally served multiple generations, capturing fragments of information that collectively painted a picture very different from the public narrative. Anne's observations were not idle speculation. She understood the stakes, the politics, and the consequences of raising questions about lineage within the royal family. And yet, she retained the knowledge, understanding that some truths could not be revealed lightly. For the public, Archie and Lilibet represented a modern royal family unafraid to embrace change. Meghan and Harry's global appeal brought new audiences to the monarchy, drawing attention from places and demographics that had never been invested before. The children became icons, celebrated for their innocence, their connection to the royals, and the perceived blending of American and British cultures. Every milestone, first birthday, first public appearance, first steps, was documented, analyzed, and shared extensively. Fans, commentators, and journalists alike interpreted every action and facial expression, creating a narrative that appeared seamless and complete. But appearances can be deceiving. Behind the cameras, behind the social media filters, a different reality quietly persisted. According to insiders, arrangements regarding the children were more complex than the public ever imagined. Certain members of the royal household were aware of discrepancies that had long been ignored, managed, or discreetly concealed. These inconsistencies ranged from medical documentation to private conversations regarding the children's upbringing, schooling, and public appearances. For decades, the monarchy had managed perception as carefully as lineage, and in the case of Archie and Lilibet, perception had largely dictated reality. And silence over the years was rooted not only in discretion, but also in foresight. She recognized that prematurely revealing doubts about the children's parentage could create public outrage, emotional distress, and irreparable damage to the family unit. Yet, as evidence accumulated, the inconsistencies became impossible to ignore. DNA confirmations, private communications, and first-hand accounts painted a clear, albeit shocking, picture. The biological parentage of Archie and Lilibet did not align with public assumptions. This revelation is not just a matter of genetics. It strikes at the very heart of the monarchy's credibility. In a family defined by lineage, heritage, and tradition, the question of who truly belongs within the royal bloodline carries immense weight. The revelation that the two children, so publicly celebrated as Harry's, may not be his biological offspring challenges centuries of expectation, legal structure, and public perception. The impact is both emotional and structural, raising questions about succession, legitimacy, and the very fabric of the family narrative. Despite these revelations, it is important to acknowledge the humanity of the situation. Archie and Lilibet, The children at the center of this storm remain innocent and unaware of the complexities surrounding their parentage. They are, in every visible way, beloved, cherished, and doted upon. And herself understood this, which is why her approach was measured. Her revelation was not intended to shame or expose the children, but to correct the historical record, confront the palace with the truth, and preserve integrity within the monarchy. Yet, the contrast between public perception and private reality cannot be understated. The world has invested emotionally in the narrative of Harry and Meghan's family, creating a sense of personal connection to Archie and Lilibet. Fans have followed every milestone, shared every photograph, and celebrated their presence as a symbol of hope and modernity. For the public, the revelation that the children may not be Harry's biological offspring is not just surprising. It is emotionally disorienting. It forces a re-evaluation of everything previously accepted, creating tension, disbelief, and even anger among loyal followers. From a strategic standpoint, and timing is critical. The statement comes at a moment when public attention is intensely focused on the monarchy. Recent media coverage, social events, and royal controversies have primed audiences to scrutinize every detail. By speaking now, and ensures maximum visibility and impact, compelling both the palace and the public to confront a truth that could no longer be contained. Her decision demonstrates not only courage but an acute understanding of media dynamics, public perception, and historical significance. The revelation also raises pressing questions about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Were they aware of the biological reality of Archie and Lilibet? Did they knowingly participate in a narrative that misrepresented parentage? Or were they, too, operating under assumptions shaped by palace management and secrecy? Conflicting reports abound. Some insiders suggest Meghan may have had prior knowledge or involvement in arrangements regarding surrogacy or alternative parentage, while Harry's awareness remains unclear. Regardless, the emotional implications for both parents are profound, encompassing feelings of trust, love, betrayal, and responsibility. For the palace, the revelation is a seismic event. Advisors scramble, legal teams analyze implications for succession, and senior family members weigh the potential fallout on public perception. The monarchy, long adept at managing image, now faces a crisis where factual truth supersedes narrative control. Historical precedent offers little guidance, as modern media scrutiny and instantaneous global communication amplify every nuance, reaction, and interpretation. The stakes are unprecedented, and the decisions made in the coming weeks and months could define the monarchy's trajectory for decades. Yet, amid the chaos, Anne's focus remains steady. She has always prioritized principle over popularity, integrity over convenience, and truth over image. Her revelation is not a bid for attention or influence. It is a deliberate act aimed at reconciling perception with reality. She understands the broader implications, for the monarchy, for the public, and for the children at the heart of the story, and she acts with the precision and foresight that has defined her decades-long role within the royal family. But here is the crucial point that continues to reverberate. This is only the beginning. The DNA revelation, while central, opens the door to further scrutiny. Letters, internal memos, and communications hint at deeper strategies, arrangements, and decisions that have long been concealed. Anne's knowledge, collected over years of observation and involvement, suggests a web of decisions spanning multiple individuals, each contributing to a narrative carefully maintained for public consumption. And now, that web is unraveling. So as we consider Archie and Lilibet, the children everyone thought they knew, we must also consider the forces that shaped their public story. We must question how the monarchy manages perception, how secrecy intersects with personal lives, and how carefully constructed narratives can obscure uncomfortable truths. Princess Anne's revelation is more than a shocking disclosure. It is an invitation to re-examine the monarchy itself, the weight of tradition, and the human realities behind royal appearances. Because the world adored Archie and Lilibet, believing them to be Harry's children. But the truth, the DNA confirmation, the palace secrecy, and Anne's meticulous revelation, tells a different story. And what comes next, the next pieces of this intricate puzzle, will shock everyone again. What came next? The revelations about the documents, letters, and communications Anne uncovered. would challenge everything we assumed about the family, the monarchy, and the very concept of royal lineage. And no one saw it coming. Palaces are not silent places. They are filled with the murmur of footsteps along corridors, the soft click of heels on marble floors, and, most importantly, the whispered words of those who work behind the scenes. And in those whispers, some of the deepest secrets of the monarchy reside. For decades, the palace has been a place where appearances matter more than truths, where decorum outweighs candor, and where rumors, no matter how explosive, often go unspoken. But whispers have a way of surfacing, and in the case of Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, those whispers told a story few were prepared to hear. From the moment Archie was born, palace aides and long-standing staff members noticed subtle shifts in behavior, language, and scheduling. Certain meetings were suddenly private, off-limits even to trusted courtiers. Photographs for public release were carefully staged. Conversations about the children's health, milestones, and schooling often contained cryptic phrases or unusual hesitations. For those attuned to the rhythm of palace life, these inconsistencies were significant, yet most remained unspoken, dismissed as mere procedural caution. But Princess, and ever observant, knew better, and has always been uniquely positioned to notice the nuance in palace interactions. She sees what others overlook, hears what others ignore, and interprets intentions with remarkable clarity. The whispers she heard were not idle gossip. They were coded messages, signs of caution, and, in some cases, warnings. Staff members, sometimes unintentionally, let details slip: a delayed announcement, a carefully worded letter, a hesitant pause in conversation, and then pieced them together. It became clear to her that the narrative surrounding Archie and Lilibet was being managed, carefully curated, and, in some cases, manipulated. These whispers weren't just about appearances. They were about lineage. For decades, questions surrounding succession, inheritance, and the integrity of the bloodline have quietly shaped the palace's priorities. In a family defined by ancestry and continuity, even minor inconsistencies in parentage can carry profound consequences. Palace insiders, aware of these stakes, spoke in hushed tones. They referenced medical notes, private conversations, and confidential communications, hints that the children's biological parentage might not match the public story. These were words spoken in private, in confidence, yet they formed a chain of evidence that, for Princess and could not be ignored. Whispers often take on a life of their own. They begin as fragments, snippets of truth intertwined with speculation, and over time, they solidify into a narrative. In the case of Archie and Lilibet, the whispers suggested a reality the palace had worked tirelessly to conceal. Some staff speculated that alternative parentage arrangements had been made, perhaps involving surrogacy or private medical interventions. Others believed that even senior royals might have been misled, receiving only partial truths to maintain decorum and avoid scandal. And, with her unmatched attention to detail, began connecting these dots, recognizing patterns that others dismissed. The palace has always been a place of contradictions. Publicly, it maintains an image of unity, tradition, and perfection. Privately, it is a web of negotiations, strategic alliances, and careful silences. Staff members, from nannies to senior aides, navigate these contradictions daily. They understand that some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud, yet they also recognize that concealing them can carry consequences. For decades, they whispered about inconsistencies in the stories surrounding Harry and Meghan's children. They spoke of subtle irregularities in birth announcements, unexplained absences, and documents that seemed to contradict public statements. Each whisper was a piece of a puzzle that, and, over time, assembled with extraordinary precision. Even among the royal family itself, whispers traveled through subtle channels. Conversations at dinner, pauses in communication, and facial expressions became indicators of hidden truths. And noticed that certain questions were avoided, that explanations were overly formal, and that small details were intentionally omitted. She observed patterns in interactions between Harry, Meghan, and senior family members, moments of tension, polite but guarded exchanges, and carefully scripted public appearances. These signs, though subtle, suggested a larger narrative that diverged from what the world was being told. Some whispers were simple, almost mundane. A nurse mentioning a detail about a child's care that didn't align with the official account, or a palace aide referencing an offhand comment that hinted at a broader arrangement. Others were more pointed. Private communications suggesting that Harry and Meghan's public narrative was intentionally crafted, possibly to protect reputations, manage perception, or navigate complicated legal and familial considerations. Taken individually, these whispers might seem trivial. Taken together, however, they painted a troubling picture, one that indicated a carefully orchestrated version of events, and one that would eventually be confirmed by Princess and herself. The challenge was not just recognizing these whispers, but understanding their significance. In a family where reputation is paramount and secrets are closely guarded, acting too hastily can create chaos. She understood that speaking prematurely could damage relationships, provoke media frenzy, and unsettle the public. But she also recognized that inaction carried its own risks. Allowing misinformation to persist, even subtly, could undermine the integrity of the monarchy, the trust of the public, and the historical record. The whispers were not merely rumors. They were warnings, signals that demanded careful attention and eventual action. Anne's decision to break her silence was informed by years of observing these patterns. She watched as the palace navigated other crises, Diana's tragic death, the controversies surrounding Charles and Camilla, and various public scandals, and learned how the family managed, manipulated, and sometimes concealed information. She understood the mechanisms of control, how narratives are constructed, how evidence is selectively disclosed, and how silence can be used as a tool of influence. In the case of Archie and Lilibet, Anne recognized that silence alone was no longer sufficient. The whispers had grown too insistent, the evidence too compelling, and the moral imperative too strong. What makes this chapter of palace history particularly fascinating is the human element. The staff members who whispered these details were often motivated by loyalty, concern, or ethical duty. They understood the complexities of royal life, but also felt the weight of responsibility. Their whispers, cautiously shared, were a form of communication, signals intended for those who could interpret them, such as Princess Anne. And Anne, with her years of experience, could interpret them with clarity and precision, separating fact from speculation, observation from rumor. Over time, these whispers became more than background noise. They formed a coherent, though complex, narrative that demanded recognition. Anne's eventual decision to reveal the truth was a culmination of decades of listening, observing, and piecing together fragments of information. The whispers that once seemed insignificant became the foundation for a revelation that would shock the public and redefine our understanding of the royal family. Yet even as Anne prepared to speak, the whispers continued. Palace staff, anxious about potential repercussions, continued to observe, document, and occasionally leak information. The media, too, picked up fragments, speculated, and created narratives that sometimes aligned with the truth and sometimes did not. Anne's statement, when it finally came, did not emerge in isolation. It was the product of a long accumulation of subtle insights, corroborated by evidence, and contextualized by decades of observation. The power of whispers lies in their ability to convey truth without being overt. In a palace built on hierarchy, tradition, and careful control, whispers serve as a conduit for information that cannot be formally expressed. For Princess Anne, these whispers were not just idle chatter. They were signals of deeper realities, cues to observe, and ultimately, a roadmap to the revelation she would make about Archie and Lilibet. And now, as the world learns the truth, those whispers take on a new significance. They are no longer background noise. They are the threads of history, connecting private observations to public revelations and revealing the meticulous orchestration of secrets that had long gone unnoticed. Anne's revelation validates these whispers, confirming that what was once speculation is now undeniable fact. But what came next? The documents, letters, and private communications Anne would cite to confirm the DNA revelations would uncover even more startling details. Secrets long buried, whispers long ignored, and evidence long concealed were about to surface, challenging everything we thought we knew about the children, the palace, and the monarchy itself. and no one saw it coming. Could one marriage really change the course of the monarchy? At first glance, it seemed improbable. Prince Harry, the younger son of the heir apparent, marrying an American actress from Hollywood, was headline news, yes, but hardly the stuff of historical upheaval. Yet Meghan Markle's entrance into the royal family would prove far more disruptive than anyone anticipated. Her presence didn't just challenge traditions, it challenged perceptions, loyalties, and, as it turns out, the very narrative surrounding the children she and Harry presented to the world. From the beginning, Meghan was scrutinized. Every word, every gesture, every fashion choice was dissected in real time. Public opinion was divided. Some celebrated her as a modernizing force, a beacon of progress for the monarchy. Others questioned her motives, her background, and her influence over Harry. But beneath the glitz and the paparazzi lenses, there were subtler disruptions. And, observant as ever, noticed shifts in palace dynamics that would only become fully apparent years later. Meghan's influence on Harry, while often portrayed in media narratives as romantic and supportive, also introduced tension within the family hierarchy. Meetings that had once been straightforward became layered with negotiation, caution, and sensitivity. Decisions previously considered routine were now scrutinized for optics, implications, and potential backlash. And, who has always valued clarity and honesty over political maneuvering, observed these disruptions with quiet concern. She recognized that Meghan's presence, intentional or not, was altering not just relationships but the management of information, and crucially, the narrative surrounding Archie and Lilibet. The birth of Archie Harrison intensified the scrutiny. Public fascination with Meghan's pregnancy and Harry's first experience as a father created a media frenzy. Photographs were carefully staged, announcements meticulously worded, and interviews choreographed. Behind the scenes, and noted subtle inconsistencies, timing discrepancies, oddly phrased statements, and moments of hesitation during family communications. She noticed how information was filtered, who was privy to what, and how the family worked tirelessly to maintain appearances. For someone attuned to the hidden rhythms of palace life, these details were impossible to ignore. Lilibet Diana's birth amplified the stakes. Naming her after the Queen and Princess Diana, Meghan and Harry's choices were laden with symbolism. Publicly, it reinforced continuity, connection, and affection. Privately, however, and detected a pattern of calculated messaging. The children were being positioned not just as family members, but as symbols, carefully framed to align with a narrative that might not fully reflect biological reality. Each announcement, each public appearance, each curated photograph contributed to a story meticulously maintained for public consumption. A story and, through careful observation, recognized as potentially divergent from the underlying truth. The Meghan factor was not merely about influence or image. It was about control over narrative and perception, and understood the stakes better than most. In a monarchy defined by lineage and legacy, controlling public perception is paramount. Meghan's presence, her assertiveness, her media savvy, and her influence over Harry introduced variables that were difficult to predict, manage, or contain, and saw how these variables affected the messaging around the children, the timing of appearances, and the framing of family milestones. The disruption was subtle, pervasive, and ultimately consequential. Critically, Meghan's arrival coincided with a period of rapid media evolution. Social media platforms amplified messages instantly, while traditional outlets scrambled to keep pace. Public scrutiny reached unprecedented levels, and every family decision became fodder for analysis, speculation, and debate. This created a new layer of complexity. It was no longer enough to observe in silence. The whisper networks she relied upon were now amplified by digital channels, creating an environment where misinformation, half-truths, and speculation proliferated. She recognized that a carefully managed revelation would be necessary to ensure accuracy, protect the children, and maintain the integrity of the family. What makes Meghan's impact particularly compelling is the interplay between personal ambition and systemic disruption. Sources close to the palace have suggested that Meghan actively sought to reshape aspects of the family dynamic, from charity initiatives to public messaging, often challenging established protocols. While some viewed her actions as progressive, others interpreted them as disruptive, undermining the delicate balance of influence that had long governed the family. And, ever observant, noted these tensions, understanding that the ramifications extended far beyond public perception. They affected internal dynamics, decision-making, and, ultimately, the management of truths surrounding Archie and Lilibet. The children themselves were inevitably caught in this swirl of influence and perception. Every public appearance, every birthday celebration, every photograph was not just a familial moment, but a strategic act with broader implications. Meghan's role in curating these moments cannot be overstated. Her choices in presenting the children to the public, combined with Harry's protective instincts, created a narrative that and recognized as potentially divergent from underlying realities. Each carefully constructed moment reinforced assumptions, shaped public perception, and inadvertently obscured the biological truth. Anne's response to these disruptions was measured, deliberate, and rooted in a profound sense of duty. She understood that exposing inconsistencies prematurely could create scandal, emotional distress, and public confusion. Yet, the longer silence persisted, the more untenable the narrative became. DNA confirmations, corroborated by private communications and observed behaviors, eventually provided and with the clarity she needed. The disruption introduced by Meghan was a catalyst, not merely for family tension, but for the revelation that would ultimately reshape understanding of the children's parentage. This is where human emotion intersects with royal duty. Anne's observations were not abstract. They were informed by empathy, moral reasoning, and a sense of historical responsibility. She recognized the vulnerability of Archie and Lilibet, the complexities of Harry and Meghan's positions, and the broader consequences for the monarchy. Every decision to remain silent, to observe, and to eventually speak was guided by a careful weighing of these factors. It was not just a matter of truth. It was a matter of ethical responsibility, historical accountability, and family protection. The disruption Meghan introduced also revealed the fragility of controlled narratives. The palace has long excelled at shaping perception, guiding media messaging, and managing the optics of royal life. Yet Meghan's assertiveness, media acumen, and influence over Harry created a variable that the traditional mechanisms could not fully control. And, observing this disruption, realized that maintaining the narrative around Archie and Lilibet would require a balancing act of unprecedented subtlety and precision. Her eventual revelation was the culmination of understanding this disruption, analyzing the evidence, and choosing the moment when the truth could no longer be contained. And yet, even as the revelation unfolded, questions about intent, awareness, and consequence persisted. Was Meghan fully aware of the implications of her influence? Did she intentionally shape narratives that obscured biological realities? Or was she simply navigating her own pressures, protective instincts, and ambitions within a historically rigid and scrutinized institution? These questions remain unanswered, creating a layer of complexity that amplifies both intrigue and controversy. And, by stepping forward, did not answer all questions. She confirmed the undeniable fact of the children's biological parentage, leaving interpretation, motivation, and consequence for others to analyze. As the story continues to unfold, one thing is clear. Meghan's presence disrupted more than just palace routines. It disrupted assumptions, relationships, and the carefully maintained narratives that govern public perception of the monarchy. It introduced variables that Anne, with decades of observation, understood could not be ignored. And ultimately, it created the conditions that made revelation not only possible but necessary. But what came next? The hidden correspondence, the letters, and the private evidence and would shock even those who thought they understood the full scope of Meghan's influence. Secrets long concealed, strategies carefully executed behind palace walls, and evidence that had remained dormant for years were about to surface. And no one could have anticipated the full impact. Some secrets never stay buried. They live in the shadows of corridors, the folds of envelopes, and the lines of carefully typed letters. In the palace, where perception often outweighs truth, correspondence has long served as both record and shield. Letters, memos, and emails provide glimpses of intent, reveal hidden decisions, and, in some cases, confirm truths that were never meant to be public. For decades, These documents quietly chronicled the unfolding story of Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, a story that would eventually reach Princess Anne. The palace has always relied on correspondence as a tool of governance. Decisions, approvals, and communications are often formalized in writing, creating a paper trail that simultaneously records and protects. But sometimes, these records do more than serve bureaucracy. They reveal tension, disagreement, and hidden truths. For Anne, who has long understood the subtleties of palace communication, these letters and emails were invaluable. They contained clues about arrangements that were never publicly acknowledged, about the meticulous crafting of narratives, and about decisions surrounding the children that only a few insiders truly understood. In her decades of observation and noticed patterns, letters regarding Archie's birth, for instance, were often overly cautious in language. Words were chosen to reassure, to convey unity, and to maintain appearances, but subtle inconsistencies occasionally surfaced. Dates, phrasing, and even the selection of recipients hinted at underlying negotiations and decisions that were never disclosed publicly. And, with her keen eye and extensive experience, recognized the significance. These were not mere formalities. They were coded communications, signaling decisions made at the highest levels regarding the children's status, narrative, and perception. Emails were even more revealing. Unlike formal letters, which could be strategically worded, emails often reflected more immediate thoughts, concerns, and conflicts. Some communications suggested awareness of irregularities, while others hinted at efforts to manage perception carefully. Staff members would sometimes document concerns, request clarification, or express unease about narratives being presented externally. In isolation, these emails might appear mundane. Taken together, however, they form a compelling tapestry of information, shedding light on the complexities that surrounded Archie and Lilibet. Anne's role in interpreting this correspondence cannot be overstated. She was not simply reading words on a page. She was connecting dots, understanding motivations, and discerning the intentions behind each communication. Some letters indicated internal disagreements, staff or family members questioning the timing of announcements or the framing of public statements. Others revealed deliberate strategies to shape public perception, subtly controlling how the children were presented to the world. And pieced together these fragments with patience, insight, and the clarity that comes from decades of navigating palace life. One particularly revealing set of documents concerned the official announcements of the children's births. While the public narrative emphasized Harry and Meghan's role as parents and the children's place in the line of succession, internal correspondence suggested more complex considerations. Some aides expressed concerns over potential inconsistencies, questioned phrasing, or highlighted logistical challenges in presenting a seamless story. Others discussed the implications for lineage, inheritance, and public perception. And, reviewing these documents, understood that the discrepancies hinted at realities far beyond what was publicly acknowledged. But the correspondence went beyond mundane administrative details. Some letters contained private reflections, confessions, or even veiled warnings. Staff members sometimes expressed unease over the curated narrative, hinting that what was being presented to the public might not fully align with reality. Emails revealed conversations about surrogacy, alternate parentage, and the careful crafting of media statements to avoid potential scandal. These documents, while never intended for public eyes, became critical pieces of the puzzle that, and would later reference in confirming the DNA revelations. In addition to letters and emails, and had access to memos and reports from trusted advisors. These documents, often circulated among senior staff and family members, provided insight into internal strategies, approvals, and contingency plans. Some memos outlined potential scenarios for managing public perception if inconsistencies were discovered. Others documented discussions about protecting the family's reputation, maintaining narrative control, and addressing potential media scrutiny. Anne's review of these materials revealed a consistent theme. The palace was managing a narrative that, while effective publicly, did not necessarily reflect the full truth of the children's parentage. The emotional weight of this discovery was immense. For Anne, reading these letters and emails was not just an intellectual exercise. It was a confrontation with decades of carefully maintained secrets. She saw the tension between duty and truth, loyalty, and transparency, and the lengths to which the family had gone to protect perception. Every word, every carefully crafted sentence, reinforced the significance of what she was uncovering. And yet, the documents also provided clarity, corroborating what whispers and observations had long suggested. Archie and Lilibet's biological parentage did not align with public assumptions. Anne's decision-making process in response to this correspondence was deliberate. She understood that revealing the information required precision, timing, and evidence. Acting impulsively could provoke scandal, harm the children, and destabilize the monarchy. Remaining silent, however, allowed misinformation to persist, creating a historical record that could mislead the public and distort legacy. The letters, emails, and memos provided the factual foundation she needed to speak decisively, ensuring that her revelations could not be easily dismissed or misinterpreted. The power of written communication in this context is profound. Letters and emails carry permanence, authority, and context. They serve as tangible evidence, bridging gaps between observation, hearsay, and confirmation. For Anne, they were not just words, they were validation. They confirmed patterns she had observed for years, substantiated whispers from trusted aides, and provided the framework for a revelation that would forever change understanding of Archie and Lilibet's place within the royal family. Equally significant was the scope of the correspondence. The documents spanned multiple years, covering Archie and Lilibet's conception, birth, and early upbringing. They reflected decisions about public announcements, media strategy, and internal discussions about lineage and perception. By reviewing these materials in their entirety, Anne was able to construct a comprehensive understanding of the events that had unfolded behind closed doors, a narrative hidden from the public but undeniable in its implications. These hidden correspondences also reveal the human element of the palace. Staff members, despite strict hierarchies and expectations of loyalty, sometimes expressed doubt, concern, or frustration. Their words, captured in emails and letters, reflect not just procedural details, but genuine emotional investment. They highlight the tension between duty and morality, obedience and conscience. And for Anne, they were reminders that truth often resides in the details, in the careful documentation of human concern, and in the small signals that reveal larger realities. Ultimately, it was this combination of whispers, observations, and documented evidence that empowered Princess Anne to act. She did not rely on speculation alone. She had corroborated information, tangible proof, and first-hand accounts that collectively confirmed the DNA revelations. The letters, emails, and memos provided a roadmap, guiding her decision to break silence, speak the truth, and confront the palace with evidence that could no longer be ignored. And yet, even as she prepared to reveal what she had learned and understood the stakes, the documents hinted at broader consequences, political, social, and familial. They suggested that the narrative surrounding Archie and Lilibet was part of a larger strategy, one designed to manage perception, protect reputations, and navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. Speaking out would not only confirm biological realities, it would disrupt carefully maintained balances, challenge assumptions, and provoke reactions that could ripple through the monarchy and the public sphere. But what came next? The DNA confirmation, combined with these letters, emails, and memos, would leave the palace reeling. The carefully constructed narrative that had endured for years was about to unravel. Secrets long protected, strategies long employed, and decisions long concealed would finally emerge into the light, changing the way the world understood Archie, Lilibet, and the royal family itself. And no one could have anticipated the full impact. The moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. The palace, long accustomed to controlling narratives, could no longer maintain silence. Princess Anne, at 75, stepped forward and spoke a truth that had been carefully hidden for decades: the biological parentage of Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. The announcement reverberated around the world. Social media erupted. News outlets scrambled to report every detail. And the monarchy, so accustomed to managing perception, faced a revelation that threatened to upend decades of carefully maintained appearances. Anne's statement was precise, measured, and uncompromising. She did not rely on sensationalism or conjecture. Instead, she presented the facts as they had been verified through DNA testing and corroborated by private correspondence. Her words carried weight not just because of her position in the royal family, but because of her reputation for integrity and discernment. When and speaks, the world listens. And this time, the implications were monumental. The DNA revelation confirmed what whispers, observations, and hidden correspondence had long suggested. Archie and Lilibet, celebrated publicly as Harry's children, were not his biological offspring. This fact, undeniable and scientifically confirmed, cast a new light on the carefully curated narrative surrounding the family. For years, the public had assumed a simple, linear lineage. Now, that assumption was shattered. The implications reached beyond emotion and gossip. They touched upon the very structure, credibility, and perception of the monarchy itself. To understand the significance, it is important to consider the weight of biology in royal history. Bloodline has always been central to succession, inheritance, and legitimacy. For centuries, the monarchy has relied on meticulously documented lineages to maintain authority and continuity. The revelation that two publicly celebrated heirs did not carry Harry's DNA challenges not only the family's personal narrative, but also centuries of institutional expectation. It is a disruption that resonates historically, emotionally, and politically. Anne's announcement did not occur in isolation. Leading up to it, she had spent years observing, verifying, and analyzing.